we're back on the record. In the matter of Gregory Martin, 24PR00777, time and place set for continuation of a hearing in this matter. All parties place their appearances on the record, starting with petitioner.
At this point, Your Honor, we are choosing to not. Oh, sorry. Hayden Salisbury for petitioner, Gazelle Fuller.
Good morning.
Samantha Bungie for the petitioner as well, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Nathan Rudolph, court-appointed attorney for the respondent, Gregory Martin Sr.
Good morning.
Good morning, Roscoe K. Waleed, here for interested person.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Selena Wilkes.
Good morning, Ms. Wilkes. Okay, I believe where we left off yesterday, we were still in petitioner's case. Petitioner anticipated recalling Ms. Fuller, though you gave me a preview. Sounds like maybe you're not. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. At this point, we're choosing to not recall Ms. Fuller, and we are going to rest. I would like to introduce a small pretrial matter if you have a moment.
Yes, let me just get to something here.
No problem.
Okay, go ahead.
So, given the amount of time that this case is going to continue, and based on the current condition of Mr. Martin Sr., we're looking to place him, move him from the VA hospital and put him in a care facility so that he's not exposed to the issues at the hospital that could decrease his health. And so we wanted to put on the record that we are planning on doing that move. Of all the people that we have served, no one, in addition to anybody in this room, has asked for notice or information, so I feel like all parties were here at this point. So we wanted to alert the court that that is something we are planning on doing, and ask for the court's blessing to do so.
Okay. The court believes that under the current temporary guardianship, which Ms. Fuller has, temporary conservatorship, she has the authority to make that decision. My understanding was that it's the facilities sometimes that are a little shy and wanting to accept people in a case where it's not fully settled. And so, am I saying that right, Ms. Salisbury?
Many do. If we can find one that is willing to accept it in this situation, we believe it's better to get him out of the hospital now, knowing that we are not going to have conclusion today on this matter.
Okay.
For another 2 weeks out.
So, yes, you have the authority to do that, and so I appreciate you letting me know, and it's important, I think, for everyone to know Mr. Waleed and Ms. Wilkes as well. All right, so with that, again, if you're planning to testify in this case, or you think you might testify in this case, you need to wait in the hall. Mr. Rudolph, do you plan to call any witnesses?
I have no evidence to present, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Waleed, we will start with your case, and we can start with your testimony or your witness's testimony. It's up to you what order you want to do it in.
I was going to pass that over because my witnesses won't be here till that 22nd
Okay.
or 26th date.
All right, Ms. Wilkes, we can
have-
start with your case, and again, you can testify first, or your witnesses, whatever order you want.
I have one witness that is present. The other remaining witnesses won't be here until around the 27th.
Okay, do you want to put that witness on this morning so they potentially don't have to come back, or would you like to start with your testimony first?
I would put Mr. Earl Wisdom.
All right, you can go ahead and get Mr. Wisdom then to come in and move the witness in.
Your Honor, Mr. Wisdom was sitting in here for part of the days.
No,
Objection.
He wasn't. Objection.
Well, first I'm going to hear from Ms. Salisbury.
There was a period of time where you had asked for parties that were going to potentially be testifying to not be here, and Mr. Wisdom stayed in the courtroom for a period of that time after you asked them to leave. So
Okay, when did he stay in the courtroom?
It was yesterday morning.
it was all. I just don't recall. He stayed in the courtroom
official
all day
timestamp was-
yesterday. I'm sorry?
The official timestamp was 8:55,
That's when he finally left.
was when he left.
Okay, we probably started after 8:30 or so, a little after 8:30. Okay. I'm inclined to let him testify. He was here for a very short time. And so, but I want to be very clear. If you are here, if you think you might be testifying, you need to wait outside. So, sir, in the back, I know you were here all day yesterday. Mr. Willie, is it someone you plan to call?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
no,
All
maybe
right.
on the 27th, so
All right.
should we leave?
Good. Just want to make sure.
Your Honor, he was in the courtroom all yesterday. We just want it noted on the record that that gentleman should be entirely dismissed as a witness because he was sitting in the courtroom all day yesterday after you said that all witnesses must be excluded.
Wait, I'm confused.
The
I thought you
gentleman
said.
in the back, Mr. Wally, just said that he might testify on the 27th.
He's
We would like
not a
our
witness.
objection.
He's not a witness.
Yeah,
right
I didn't hear that. That isn't what I heard him say. So let me back up. We're going to hear from Mr. Wisdom. I'm overruling that objection given the very short nature to which he was sitting in here. Thank you, Jasmine. And then anyone else in the courtroom, if you think you might be testifying, you need to wait outside. No one else has been called as a witness, so any objections are premature at this time. All right.
Okay, if you want to have a seat, I can look up real quick. Can you see your name one more time? Miracle. Thank you so much.
All right. Ms. Wilkes, do you want to go grab your witness from the home?
She's in the wrong courtroom.
She's right there right now. Mr. Wisdom, you're going to come up to the witness box to my right here.
If I can get you a thing so you can hear better. Okay, we're gonna go to 16D. It's right next door, okay?
So when you get up here, Mr. Wisdom, you can stay. We're going to actually take a seat. We're going to get you the earpiece first, okay?
It should be on and ready to go.
Okay.
Can you hear me all right?
I hear nothing out of this.
Nothing's coming out of that? All right, let me try this one.
Maybe if I hold it down tight.
Try this one. This part right moves around your ear. It's just like press it in.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, can you hear me all right now?
Yes.
Perfect. If I can get you now to stand and raise your right hand.
Okay.
Under the penalty of perjury, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. And for the record, please say your first and last name and spell them both.
Earl Wisdom, EARLWISDOM.
Okay, Ms. Wilkes, go ahead.
Good morning. Could you state to the court how long you have known Gregory Martin?
Talk up louder to the mic.
Could you state to the court how long you've known Gregory Martin?
Between 35 and 40 years.
And how did you come about knowing him?
Mostly through the contractors. I'm a plumbing contractor, and he was an electrical contractor, and doing a lot of jobs together.
What what type of jobs together?
Construction jobs, remodels, new construction, whatever.
Did you ever visit Mr. Martin in any of the medical facilities he was in?
Oh, did I ever see him in?
Yes.
Yes.
And what are the name of those facilities?
The first facility he was in that I saw him in was a care facility out 102nd and Burnside.
Okay. And at those job sites, did any of his children ever come?
The only time I saw any of them there was when he signed himself out, and I had to be there, and he asked me to take him out of there because he wouldn't let him leave.
Oh, we're talking about the job sites.
Oh, the job site. I thought
Yes.
medical.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What?
Would you like for me to restate the question?
Yeah.
Did any of Mr. Martin's children ever come to any of the construction sites?
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
Overruled. You can answer, sir.
Okay. Actually, his son, he worked there a lot. Let's see. I don't recall any of his other kids showing up there.
Do you recall one of the daughters requesting financial aid for a husband?
I did not hear it, but Greg was upset about it, and he told me that she had the gall to expect him to pay for her husband's college education.
On how many occasions did you have phone conversations with Megan Hoffman with APS?
Let's see. I think there were 3.
Were those conference calls with other parties on the line?
One was a conference call with you, and the others were just single.
At any time, did Megan request or establish dates and times to have meetings to investigate?
During
I would like to
one
reiterate
conference call.
that.
Okay.
Not conference calls. Did she ever state dates and times to set up a meeting?
She requested a meeting, but you asked her to give, it was on a conference call, you asked her to give a date and time and see if your schedule would permit.
Do you recall if the date and time was ever given?
I don't remember any date or time set.
Do you recall Mrs. Markle having conversations with your wife, Margaret?
I wasn't there, but she
I'm
told
gonna
me.
object at this point to hearsay and the fact that he just said he wasn't there.
Well, she
Lack of
hasn't
foundation.
asked for a statement yet. She's asked whether or not a conversation occurred, so that objection would be premature.
Objection, I'd also say deleting, who's Mrs. Markle?
Okay, and we're gonna just set some rules today with respect, when we have two counsel for the same petitioner, I need just one of you to be the person who's objecting, so who does that person want
Sure,
to be?
I can defer to Ms. Salisbury then.
Okay, all right, so Ms. Salisbury, you have an objection? I'll let you finish this one, Ms. Bungie, go ahead, 'cause you started
I was
it.
happy to
I realize I kind of threw you a curveball there, but I just wanted to.
No worries. Objection, Your Honor, leading, who's Ms. Markle? There's been no foundation as to who this person is. It's definitely leading a witness on direct.
Yeah, I don't know who Ms. Markle is, so I'm gonna sustain the objection, you might just have to ask it in a different way.
It's Miss Margaret, not Markle.
Ms. Margaret?
Margaret.
Who's Margaret?
Margaret is Mr. Wisdom's wife.
Okay, so you would need to kind of ask some questions to be able to have us understand who that person is first, okay? All right, so I'm gonna sustain the objection. Go ahead and ask your question.
Mr. Wisdom, do you ever recall Megan Hoffman from Adult Protection Service repeatedly calling your home asking to speak with Margaret?
She had called while I was gone. So I did not hear her, but I heard about it.
Objection, hearsay.
Okay, so that
Was
is.
was that on more than one
Ms.
occasion?
Ms. Wilkes, I'm gonna
Oh,
have you pause.
I'm
just-
sorry.
No, you're fine, just 1 second. So the objection to hearsay is sustained. The basis of his knowledge is hearing it from someone else. So he can't testify, Ms. Wilkes, to what other people tell him unless that statement falls within an exception in the evidence code to which you can provide to the court, okay?
Okay, thank
All
you,
right,
Your
go
Honor.
ahead.
Were those calls on more than one occasion?
Yes.
Did you receive any phone calls or emails from VA doctors?
I got one email from the doctor. I don't remember his last name, but he was requesting information.
Objection, hearsay.
Yeah, what the doctor said would be hearsay. The question was whether you received a phone call or communication. So you can answer that question. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll have you repeat your question, Ms. Wilkes. That might be easier. Okay? Ms. Wilkes, if you could repeat
Earl?
your question.
Yep.
Did you ever receive any phone calls from VA Medical Center physician or
Yes.
emails?
Yes. The physician identified himself.
Objection, hearsay.
Sorry.
Yeah, that could be a little bit awkward. I understand.
Hold it up there.
Yeah. Okay, can you hear me, Mr. Wisdom? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. That thing can be a bit awkward, I understand.
Yeah.
So the objection is sustained. So you can't testify as to anything that someone told you. Okay? That's hearsay. Unless there's an exception that Ms. Wilkes can point out to the court. Okay? So just answer the question that is asked. Okay? All right, Ms. Wilkes, go ahead.
Your Honor, correct me if I'm wrong, but did you just stipulate that only one counsel could do objections?
Only one counsel for Ms. Fuller. So there are two lawyers for Ms. Fuller. Mr. Rudolph represents Mr. Martin Sr. in the hospital.
Well, the two of them just did an objection.
I don't understand what you mean. Ms. Rudolph did an objection, and Ms. Ellsworth did an objection. They're two different parties. So they
Okay.
both can do objections.
Okay.
The two that can't do objections together are Ms. Ellsworth and Ms. Bungie, because they both
Okay.
represent Ms. Fuller.
Okay.
Okay?
I understand it now.
All right, got it.
Okay. Mr. Wisdom, on one of those phone calls with the doctor, were you requested to approve a blood transfusion?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Sustained. So you can't answer that question, okay? Ms. Wilkes, you can't ask questions about what the doctor said, and that's what you're trying to
Okay.
do.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead.
Would you say that Mr. Martin was homeless?
Was what?
Was homeless after being discharged from the nursing home?
Yes, I definitely say he was walking on his own, and he signed himself out of the nursing home.
And when he signed himself out, was he homeless or did he have a place of residence to go?
He had a place to go to.
I'll rephrase the question. When Mr. Martin discharged himself out of the nursing home, did he have a place to go to at that time?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained. He's already answered that question, Ms. Wilkes.
Okay. Do you recall if Mr. Martin had caregivers?
I did not see them myself.
Do you recall if Mr. Martin ever had a business checking account?
Oh, he may have at one time, but he told me he quit that because he always paid in cash because one of his accountants was paying her phone bills with his checking account.
Do you know the daughter, one of the children's name, Dawn?
I know her.
Do you recall seeing her at the nursing home?
On the day that he discharged him, or he signed himself out, and I took him out of there, yes.
Could you tell the court in your own words what transpired on that date?
He signed himself out. They told him he had to be.
Objection hearsay.
Sustained.
Um,
You can continue answering. You just can't talk about what someone told you, okay?
Your Honor, he was present. So he's not talking about what someone told him. He was present at the nursing home.
Yes, he was about to say what the hospital facility told him. That's hearsay.
Thank you.
So, if you want to re-ask the question, that's fine. I think you were asking about an
Miss-
action, not necessarily a statement.
Mr. Wisdom, were you present and were you involved in conversations with the nursing home facility on the day that Mr. Martin legally signed himself out?
Yes, I was.
Could you tell the court in your own words who was present and what took place?
When I got there, Selena was there with Greg outside. He was in a wheelchair. And care facility administrator was standing there. And Greg asked me to take him out of there. And the administrator said, that's all I
Objection,
need.
hearsay.
She said to me,
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained. With respect to what the care facility personnel told you. But you can continue your answer.
okay. Oh, could you, and I went in, they wanted me to sign a paper.
Objection, hearsay.
Overall, go ahead.
Thank
It
You
was
can
what
answer.
was stated to me,
Go ahead. You can answer.
okay, about signing a paper that it was against medical advice. And I started signing, and I tore it up because, no, I'm not signing anything. He signed himself out. That's all I care about.
And what, just to put a court certification, what date are we talking about here?
We're talking about
Well, maybe
July
you
7th.
can, maybe you need to ask the question, Ms. Wilkes, as to what date we're talking
What
about.
date are we talking about, Mr. Wisdom? And year?
I believe it was July 7th.
What year, Mr. William Wilson?
Good. That would be 23, I believe. Yeah.
Do you recall Mr. Martin, while you were present, being denied of his insulin prescription?
Yes. They refused to give. I asked him specifically about his medication. And I was told by the administrator.
Objection, hearsay.
You can't talk about what administrator told you. I realize that's frustrating. And,
Yes, very.
but those are the rules, unless there's an exception that can be pointed out.
Mr. Wisdom, could you share with the court what happened after that, where Mr. Martin was taken to get medication?
Oh, I took him to his VA primary physician out in Fairview.
On July 7th, the date that he was denied his insulin, what facility did you and Margaret take Mr. Martin to?
Emmanuel Hospital.
And did they refer him to another facility, and what was the name of that facility?
They did not refer him. After they did, he checked him. They gave him medication. And then I told him I was going to take him to the VA, which I did.
When you took him to the VA on the day of July 7th, 2023, was he seen by a physician there, or was he asked to go back to Emmanuel?
Objection, leading.
Overall,
I don't recall if it was the exact same day that when we left from Emmanuel, we had to get an appointment to see his physician. And he was seen by his primary caregiver.
At what point was he sent back to Emmanuel because there was an overload at the VA? I'll go on with another question. Was Mrs. Megan Hoffman informed and requested to open an investigation of Mr. Martin being denied his insulin at the nursing home?
I was told on the phone, and I talked to her when she called me. Because she said,
Objection, hearsay.
So what you were told?
yeah, I
You
know.
can't testify to it. So objection assistant.
I was accused of kidnapping him from the nursing home. That was the first time I heard from Miss Markle.
On how many occasions did you request for Megan Hoffman to open an investigation into the matters that you called to her attention?
Two different instances.
Was Mrs. Megan Hoffman more concerned about the negligence of Mr. Martin's medication or the financial?
The questions I was asked were more about financial statements.
Nothing about the investigation of medications being denied upon discharge.
I don't remember anything about that.
Do you recall on the times you visited Mr. Martin at the nursing home seeing a sign posted on his closet door about laundry?
Objection, relevance. I'm not sure if his laundry has to do with who we're here about today.
Overruling, give some latitude. You can answer, sir.
The laundry was checked that said his daughter was taking care of the laundry, so they didn't perform any laundry service.
Do you recall the period of time his daughter abandoned him in the nursing home?
It was right about 2 weeks. His laundry hamper was overflowing.
And do you recall who Mr. Martin called to bring him clean clothes?
It was you.
Do you recall telling Megan Hoffman about the situation he was living in at the nursing home?
Yes, I do.
Did Jessica, the VA social worker, at any time when Mr. Martin was admitted to the VA schedule dates and times for you or Selena Wilkes to come in person and meet about Mr. Martin's discharge?
Objection is a compound question. She's asking about multiple people.
Overall, go ahead. You can answer.
Okay. One time.
Did she give a date and time, or any more than one date and time, or any dates and times for yourself or myself, Selena Wilkes, to come in person and meet with her?
Just that one time.
Could you be more specific?
I met with Megan, and she called Jessica.
Objection, hearsay.
Always talk about an action that she called.
Okay.
You can answer, sir. You
So-
just can't talk about what someone told you.
Okay. Megan made a phone call while I was talking to her. Subsequently, the social worker came into the conference room. Jessica did.
But at no time were there any scheduled meetings as myself being the appointed power of attorney and yourself being the backup attorney made regarding Mr. Martin's care and discharge?
Just that one time for me.
Just the one time for you?
Right.
No other scheduled appointments?
No.
Did you ever receive information about blood transfusion?
Yes, I did.
Did you participate in making that decision?
Yes. I approved the transfusion as was outlined by the person that called me the technical guy.
Do you recall morning calls from one or more doctors updating Mr. Martin's care?
Just that one call, you put it on a conference call.
Were you always available for phone calls from VA facility?
On 24 hours a day.
Do you recall at any time any difficulty in anyone getting in touch with you?
Not that I know of.
Do you recall Mr. Martin having you as the person to call, with you having the power of attorney in reference to his medical?
First time I took him to his primary, he stated that's how it was going to be.
Do you recall Mr. Martin finding out that someone had changed all contact information on his medical records?
Yes, at that time.
And was at the time someone changed the information on his medical records without his consent? Where was Mr. Martin at the time when he corrected that?
Objection testifying. There's been nothing put in foundation about medical records being changed unbeknownst to him.
It's not medical records, Your Honor. It's individuals that Mr. Martin appoints as having authority for the hospital to contact.
I'm not sure I'm following you. Why don't you rephrase the question? I'm sustaining the objection. Why don't you rephrase the question and see where we get from there?
Okay. Were you present with Mr. Martin when he learned that someone had changed all the medical contact on his medical records?
I was.
And where was that? Which facility was that at the time when he learned of that?
The Fairview VA Center out there.
And do you recall someone putting the ex-wife of 30 years' name on as a person of contact?
Yes, I do.
And do you recall the daughter's name that was on there as contact?
I believe it was Alzana.
And do you recall Mr. Martin changing all of that?
Vehemently, yes.
And when he changed it, were you added as the primary contact person?
I was.
And were you added because you were a veteran and familiar?
Objection.
Or
Overruled. Go ahead. You can continue the question.
were you added to be the first contact because you were a veteran and you were familiar with the VA's medical procedures?
Yes, I was.
Did you always take Mr. Martin to all his medical appointments?
To his medical appointments, yes.
Was that at his request?
Yes.
You recall giving Jessica and Megan Hoffman copies of a medical directive?
I gave copy to Megan.
On the power of attorney documents, do you recall the nurse signing and acknowledging that all pages were there?
Objection, hearsay, calls for hearsay.
Overruled. She's not asking about a statement. She's asking about an action.
I requested the signature myself.
And that request, was that request to confirm that they received documents of a power of attorney and documents of a directive medical order from you?
Yes.
Did you personally deliver those up there?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall researching for a long-term care facility for Mr. Martin to go in?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall given time frames, rush time frames, for you to find the facilities?
They wanted to release him immediately.
So did you and who else went with you to look at facilities?
I went with the owner of the facilities.
And who was present with you?
Just us.
Just us, like who? What is us?
Myself and the owner of the facilities.
Was there anyone else present with you and met you there when you went to the facility?
Objection. Asked and answered.
Overruled. You can answer.
He said you could answer.
Oh, okay. I don't. I know once you did.
Okay. Was placement prices talked about?
Yes, they were.
I'm sorry, placement what?
Placement, like monthly cost of him being in the
placement
facility?
costs. Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Where rooms showed where Mr. Martin could go?
Yes, they had one empty at that point.
And was it immediately available?
It was immediately available.
Was the nursing home administrator given Jessica's information?
It's not a nursing home.
Well,
Adult care facility.
adult care facility, were they given Jessica's information to communicate and to set up the transfer?
Yes.
Do you recall when a follow-up was given, if they had contacted Jessica, do you recall what he told you?
Objection calls for hearsay.
What? Who told them?
The administrator that gave the
Okay. So
interview.
all right. So that's it. That's the stand. That's Anderson. So you can't answer that. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Did you recall the VA canceling everything? Or Megan Hoffman canceling everything, all the arrangements?
It wasn't happening.
But do you think that we had fully cooperated with their request at the time?
As far as I know, yes.
And it was done in a timely fashion?
Right.
Do you ever recall calling to check on Mr. Martin's status in not being able to get any update, as you were still on record as the person he selected to give information to, the first one to call?
I was supposed to put it this way. I told the man when he called about the blood transfusion, let me know if anything changes. Give me a call, 24 hours a day. Never heard a word.
When was the next time you received any communication from the VA about Mr. Martin's care?
I believe it was when I got the paperwork, the notification of these proceedings.
At any time prior to that, did you ever receive any other phone calls from Jessica or Mrs. Fuller?
I don't believe I did.
Did you receive any information as them saying you were removed or no longer in authority to request any medical updates on Mr. Martin?
I have yet to hear anything or see anything.
So, do I understand that the last communication then was about the blood transfusions which you approved?
That's right.
Have you been to visit Mr. Martin or been allowed to visit Mr. Martin since the conversation of the blood transfusions?
I was under the impression we were not allowed.
So at no time did you know that you were no longer the person of contact on his medical?
Nope.
Did Megan Hoffman ever indicate any of that to you?
Nope.
Did anyone ever call you from the VA or the social worker about being primary on Mr. Martin's medical directive?
No.
Was that a notarized document, the medical directive?
I believe it had a notary seal, yeah.
Going to the situation with Carlos and the transfer of 1 point.
Objection, Your Honor. There's no foundation
Well, we
for
haven't
Carlos.
finished the question, so you can object when we finish the question if you wish. So go ahead and finish the question, Ms. Wilkes.
Do you recall, Mr. Wisdom, of the sale of a commercial site on 28th in Alberta for $1.2 million?
I found out about it.
Where do you recall where you were at when you found out about it?
I was on a construction site about 3 blocks from my house.
Do you recall who the general contractor was on that construction site?
His name is Carlos.
Do you recall him telling you he was present doing the signing of the documents?
I'm gonna object to hearsay.
Sustain. So you can't answer that. Next question.
Do you recall the documents bearing a forged signature and not Mr. Martin's signature?
Purported to be.
Over the course of the time frame you found out that you were power of attorney on documents that Mr. Martin had legally got prepared prior to any of his medical, we would classify them as disasters that he's had prior to any of his medical problems. At the time that you were power of attorney prior to any hospitalizations, do you recall receiving any payments, and this is prior to, of any kind from Lucas on the $1.2 million?
Nope.
Do you recall Mr. Martin needing that money to live on?
I don't know if he had any other income.
Do you recall the reason of the sale or fraudulent sale of the property?
He said he was broke. He told me.
Did you recall on numerous occasions of him indicating to you who he would borrow large sums of money from?
Has he borrowed some from his son? And other contractors.
Do you recall a conversation with him where there was occasions he borrowed 5,000 or higher amounts from anyone?
I know, he said he had borrowed money and he thought he had paid it back.
Do you recall any time he indicated he was flat broke and someone loaned him 5,000 or more?
I know you loan me money
Do
every
you?
once in a while.
Was that large amounts?
Sometimes large amounts, yes.
Did it occasionally sometime cover delinquent property taxes?
Yes.
Did he ever indicate to you that the person that loaned him those large amounts always had his back?
Constantly.
Do you think, or do you believe, well, let me rephrase this question. How long have you known Selena Wilkes?
Who?
Selena Wilkes.
Oh, Selena. Okay. Probably a good 30 years.
Have you ever known Mrs. Wilkes to borrow any money from anyone?
Not that I know of.
Have you ever known for Mrs. Wilkes to always be there as a helping hand to her best friends, financially or otherwise?
Always.
Do you think Mrs. Wilkes would ever take advantage of Mr. Martin financially?
No.
Are you aware who has been the upkeep of Mr. Martin's properties, even when he had the open heart surgery?
You have been.
Were you aware that that upkeep was hired out?
Yes.
Were you also aware that Mr. Martin had substantial amount of debt with other contractors?
Oops. Yes.
And were you aware at times he would borrow the money to pay the debt when certain contractor jobs had not passed inspection, that he could collect the money?
Right.
And do you recall who he borrowed that money from?
A lot of times you.
Do you recall that Mrs. Wilkes was the one that had the good credit and the line of credit to loan?
Objection, she's testifying.
Sustained.
I'll rephrase that, Your Honor. Do you ever recall Mr. Martin saying, when he made the statement to you that Selena Wilkes always had his back, did you ever recall him ever telling you that I ever denied him of any finances when he was in financial distress?
No.
Do you ever recall me partnering up or ever purchasing any properties with Mr. Martin? Real estate?
No.
Mr. Martin's attorney, Kelly Dahl. Do you recall Mr. Dahl meeting with the power of attorneys?
Yes.
And at the end of those meetings, did you recall him asking for payments?
Basically every meeting.
Do you recall who paid the money?
You did.
Do you recall him requesting cash?
Yes.
Do you recall him ever giving receipts for each time he requested cash?
I signed that.
Do you recall him telling Mr. Lucas to send, deferring payments after a year? Mr. Lucas decides he wants to give some money on the $1.2 million property. Do you recall Mr. Dahl referring to someone else?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to leading, and frankly, I don't understand what the question is.
It's the same.
I'll rephrase the question, Your Honor.
Okay.
Did you receive a phone call from Attorney Dahl about the $1.2 million payments that should have been made years ago on Mr. Martin's property?
I'm going to object to leading, Your Honor. So the question also calls for hearsay. You can ask if he recalls receiving a call, but not the contents of that call.
It's the same.
Do you recall the call?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall the conversation
Yes, I do.
in the call? Can you share with the court?
Objection calls for hearsay.
No, she hasn't finished her question.
Okay.
So.
Did Mr. Dahl,
So I take it you're withdrawing that question. So
Pardon?
No objection to rule on. You can ask your next question as well.
okay, did Mr. Dahl refer any payments directly to you from Mr. Lucas?
They were supposed to go to my house.
Did you receive a phone call from Mr. Dahl confirming that?
Yes, I did.
Do you know of any reason why Mr. Dahl, as Mr. Martin's attorney, would be referring such large, substantial amounts of money to you as the backup PO?
Not really.
And was this during the time period when the court had temporarily appointed Mrs. Fuller?
Yes.
Was Mr. Dahl aware or had he received documents from the court?
I'm going to object to calls for speculation.
It's the same.
I'll rephrase that, Your Honor.
Okay.
Did Mr. Dahl ever indicate to you that he received
You can finish the question.
the same documents or court pleadings of Mrs. Fuller being temporarily appointed by the courts?
Objection calls for hearsay.
I didn't hear the first part. I'm sorry. What was the first part of your question?
First part of the question was he aware that Mr. Doyle received legal documents from the court as Mrs. Fuller being temporary?
Was it Mr. Wisdom aware?
Mr. Wisdom
as to
aware?
whether Mr. Doyle received some documents?
Yeah.
Well, I think you need to ask questions in aid of your objection, I suppose.
That wasn't the question, Your Honor. The question was,
Oh, okay.
did
Well, then it
Mr.
sounds
Doyle
like
state that that's what happened? So that's what I was objecting to. She can rephrase the question if she likes, but that.
Okay, so it sounds like she's changed the question, so it's clear for Mr. Wisdom. If you could ask the question again.
Mr. Wisdom, do you recall during the time that the court had temporarily appointed Mrs. Fuller that Kelly Doyle, Mr. Martin's attorney, was aware that Mrs. Fuller was appointed temporary?
Yes, I was.
However, you were still called upon to receive money.
Right.
Did you receive any texts in reference to the 1.2 million?
That I did receive text.
Did you receive a phone call in reference to the 1.2 million as to get Mr. Martin to change documents while he was incapacitated in the hospital? From Mr.
Yes, I
Lucas. And was Kelly Doyle aware of that?
Yes, he was.
I'm going to object. It calls for that's speculation unless you can lay the foundation that he had personal knowledge of that.
Stan?
Were you a little bit confused as to why he called you, Mr. Doyle called you,
Yes.
knowing that Mrs. Fuller had been appointed by the court?
Yeah.
What did you do with those payments?
They're still sitting
So
right beside my chair.
they actually
At my
were
house.
sent to you.
They were sent to me.
And what amount?
I think it is $1,274 or $75 for a monthly payment.
From redoing the documents that were from reviewing the documents that were forged, would you say that that's a correct amount for the time frames of the months that were in arrearage?
I'm going to, at this point, object to leading. She's bundling up her own testimony within the question about whether the documents were forged, and I don't know what document she's referring to.
The evidence is stating the objection. So remember, Ms. Wilkes, you're going to get to testify and tell whatever you want to tell the court that's relevant. But
Okay.
it does seem like you're trying to testify through him at times.
So were all phone calls three-way conference calls with the VA or Jessica or
Not all.
Adult protection?
Objection, she asked this question earlier, and it's a compound with multiple parties.
Sustained.
Yeah, I have an excuse for the restroom real quick.
We're gonna stop at 10 o'clock. Can you wait till then?
I can't. I'm 50. No things change when you get older.
Okay. We'll take a break then. We'll go off the record. We'll be back in 5 minutes, okay?
You got it.
Can we confer really quick? Yeah. Yep.
Are we going off the record?
Yes.